In this video, we will show you how to use the AutoSecure wizard on a Cisco router. So we're going to run this on R2. Now R2 is already configured, and we can view that config by typing in show run. So here we can see details of what's configured in terms of the interfaces, the IP addresses that are defined, even static routes or routing configured on the device. To run AutoSecure, we will type in auto space secure. Now let's do question mark. And these are some of the additional options we can include for AutoSecure. Now by default, when we press enter, it will go through an interactive configuration. That means it will go through a wizard and we can input what we want to disable or what we're going to define on our device. So it's walking through a step-by-step wizard. If we type in no or AutoSecure, no interact for the additional option, then it's going to disable most common services that could be used for attacks. So it's recommended that if you do want to use AutoSecure, go through the interactive way to select and to be familiar with what options are presented there. So let's press enter. So now it's going to go through the wizard, and the first question is this router connected to the internet? Now let's assume that R2 is connecting to the internet. It's connecting to R1. So let's assume yes, we are connecting to the internet. So we're going to type in yes and continue. Now the next question is enter the number of interfaces facing the internet. Now the default is 1. And let's just say that there is only one interface that is connecting to the internet. So the default is 1, so we will press enter. Now we'll show a list of all interfaces on our router. Now we need to select which interface is connecting to the internet. So let's say it's serial 0/0. So let's type that in now. So now, so far, these are the services it's going to disable or enable, including configuring a security banner. So some of the things it's going to disable includes Finger, PAD, UDP, TCP, small services, and even enabling service password encryption, and so on. Next, we can define a security banner, which begins with the character of K, and then typing in our security banner. And K again to end or to complete the security banner. The next question is to enter or to create a enable secret password. So let's type one in now. Something nice and short. Now the great thing about the AutoSecure wizard is that it will prompt you if, let's say, a password is too short. That it must be at least 6 characters long. So let's go ahead and enter a new, longer enable secret password. Great, that took. So let's confirm and retype in that enable secret password. Now it's telling us to create a enable password. So let's create a new enable password, which must be different from the enable secret. But keep in mind that only the enable secret will be used over the enable password. Next, we will define or create a local username to be added to the local user database. So this username will be admin. And let's enter our password that we want to use for this local user account and confirm the password. So you see other details filled in, like configuring the AAA local authentication and configuring the console aux and VTY lines for local authentication. So all of this is part of the AutoSecure configuration. Now the next question says the blocking period when logging attacks are detected. So we can type in some value here, or we can type in enter. But typing in enter means that the device is not secured against login attacks. The next question is to configure SSH on this router. We want to say yes, which is the default. So we can type in enter. And of course, doing that, the first thing that needs to be defined is a domain name. So we're going to type in routehub.local for the domain name. Now this is required for generating the RSA keys. And as you can tell, that additional services are being disabled on all interfaces, such as no IP redirects, proxy ARPs, unreachables, direct broadcast. These are pretty much very common best practices that should be disabled in all interfaces. You also see securing the forwarding plane services, which means enabling Ceph, enabling unicast RPF on all interfaces connected to the internet. And our next question here will be, do we want to configure a CBAC firewall feature? This means we want to apply a stateful firewall on R2, and this policy will be applied to the internet-facing interface, which is serial 0/0, which connects to R1. So we're going to type in yes, we do want to enable a stateful firewall on R2. Now at this time we are finished. So now the AutoSecure wizard is showing us all the configuration that is going to apply. Now some of this looks familiar because we see the banner that we just typed in during the wizard and other options that look very similar. Even the enable secret and the enable password, even the admin account that was created, and so on. Our interfaces there with the IP node redirects, proxy ARPs for all interfaces on a router. See that there. And you see the IP inspect, which is the configuration part of the CBAC firewall configuration. So this is all the configuration that we can now apply to our running config. So if this looks good and there's no concerns here, we can go ahead and type in enter, which is the default, which means it will apply this configuration to the running config. Now doing that, starting to apply the config, and the RSA key is starting to generate for the SSH, and we're finished. So now let's go back and look at our show running config. Now remember, the last time you saw it was very basic. We saw the interfaces configured, the IP address, and static routes. Now looking at the show run, it will look a lot more different with a lot of configuration, a lot of best practices applied because of the AutoSecure wizard. You'll see things like service password encryption is enabled, timestamps is enabled. We see logging has been defined, and our enable secret and the enable password has been defined during the AutoSecure wizard. We see local authentication applied using AAA services. Continuing down our list here, we see IPsec enable, which is part of the securing the forwarding plane of how data is being transmitted, other services being disabled. All the IP inspect is part of the CBAC firewall configuration, which is generated because of the wizard. Let's keep going down. We see our local user account that was created. SSH is enabled, followed by the recommended timeout and the authentication retries, which is 2. We see our interfaces applied with the no IP redirects, unreachables, and proxy ARPs, with no set for all the interfaces. But under serial 0/0, you'll see the same services disabled under the interface, followed by the IP access group and an IP inspect. These two are part of the CBAC firewall configuration. So this is basically connecting into the internet. So that's why it was asking us the question on which interface is connecting to the internet. So it can apply the appropriate policies to that interface to protect it from an untrusted network. So as you can tell, the AutoSecure has applied a lot of security related configuration to our router to protect it. Here's our banner and other authentication. So this is basically how AutoSecure works and can be used on a Cisco router. And one last note about AutoSecure before we conclude this video. So you can tell AutoSecure makes security or applying security with best practices in mind nice and simple, nice and easy, but it can also be dangerous. So it's recommended to not run AutoSecure in a production environment. Now you can run it on a different router, get comfortable with what the different commands are doing, and then you can kind of copy and paste what is important into your environment one by one. So AutoSecure is very dangerous, especially if you run it into the non-interactive mode. So just keep that in mind. Use this as a baseline to know how can I generate a best practice configuration. We'll run it in a non-production router, see what the syntax is, and then apply those syntax to your environment one by one. Just be careful.